After years of leaving Mac users in the dark without a first-party display, Apple finally released the brand new Studio display with a modern design and features we expect as Mac users. For the last few months, I've been using the Eve Spectrum 4K display, which has a lot of great qualities and even features that Apple's own display does not. So today, we are going to compare the new Apple first-party display to the display I previously called the best display I had used in a Mac. Hey, I'm Jerry, and let's get right into the comparison, starting with the design. And to keep things simple, we're comparing the Eve Spectrum 4K and stand with the Studio display with the height and tilt adjustable stand. The design of these two displays is very different. The Eve comes in an all black and plastic package with a two-piece metal stand and very thin and modern bezels around the 27-inch display. I find the case very minimal and unassuming, which will fit well on most desk setups. The Studio display comes with a fully silver aluminum body with thicker black bezels. The stand is also made of solid aluminum before you get to the adjustment mechanism. This case really stands out from the crowd with super clean lines following Apple's current modern design language with perforations on the top and bottom for speakers and fans. Both of these 27-inch displays are fairly thin, but the Studio display comes in about 3/4 of an inch without the stand, whereas the Spectrum comes in at about 7/8 of an inch. The Spectrum also has another 3/4 of an inch bulge where the stand connects to the display and ports connect. The footprint of the Studio display is just over 8 inches and the Spectrum is just under 9 inches, but the Studio display is over 1/2 an inch wider. They can both tilt forward and backwards, and the Eve can also rotate 90 degrees. The movement of the Studio display is much more fluid, and it's just easier to get the perfect setting than it is on the Eve. Both of the displays also have a good amount of stability with front-to-back motion, so typing and normal desk bumps will not cause the displays to move a lot. On the other hand, if the desk is bumped or moved left and right, the Eve can get quite wobbly on that axis versus the Studio display, which is very stable. Both of these displays are relatively minimal and look good, but there's also a difference with the power supplies. The Studio display has a built-in power supply with no external power brick, but does have a so-called non-removable power cable. This really shouldn't be an issue unless a pet chews on the cord or something, and if they do, you may need to take it to an Apple store to get replaced, but more on support later. The Eve Spectrum has an external power brick that is quite hefty, and because the cord from the brick to the display is relatively short, you may have to mount it under your desk or use another cable management solution. I like to use a standing desk, and the power cable has come out of the back of the Eve display many a time. When it comes to the display specs and features, the Eve Spectrum is a 4K display at 163 pixels per inch, has 144 Hz max refresh rate, 450 nit brightness, P3 color, and up to 750 nits of brightness with HDR. The Studio display features a 5K display at 218 pixels per inch, a 60 Hz refresh rate, 600 nits of brightness, P3 color, and True Tone for automatically adjusting the white balance. As you can see, these panels themselves are very different, like the exterior design. If we compare the resolution of 4K and 5K, you can see that the 5K panel is sharper compared to the 4K, with both scaled to 2560 by 1440. More pixels equal more sharpness. You can get a slightly sharper image with the 4K display if you scale it to 2x and make the resolution 1920 by 1080. This gets a little sharper and closer to the 5K, but everything on the display is much larger, leaving less screen real estate. Eyes of course vary, and personally you may not be able to tell much difference between the sharpness of those two displays. But for people who can, it can be very noticeable. And that goes for the refresh rate as well. The Studio display's 60 Hz refresh matches most external displays on the market, which provides a standard for motion smoothness on the display. High refresh displays are becoming more common on phones like the iPhone 13 Pro, high-end tablets, and even gaming monitors where you want to have a high refresh rate so you can make split-second decisions with less blur. Now, I'm not here to advocate that you should use a Mac to play high-intensity games because macOS just is still not built for that. But a high refresh rate display just makes all interactions on the display feel smoother. Like with the iPhone 13 Pro and iPad Pro, you can feel the difference when scrolling up and down. Text stays smoother when in motion instead of becoming a blurred mess, and that's the same thing on a desktop display. Scrolling up and down on a web page looks better in motion on a high refresh display compared to one that is not. Moving the mouse around the display or clicking on menus or dragging windows around just has a good feel to it. The Studio Display is not bad by any means, and 60Hz really is the standard that most displays use. So if you go with the Studio Display, it won't feel any different compared to any other non-ProMotion display that you've used. When viewing standard dynamic range video, the 600 nits on the Studio Display looks better compared to the 450 on the Spectrum. The colors are brighter, the contrast or dynamic range looks better, and the motion actually looks smoother somehow, even though it's only 60Hz content. When you enable HDR on the Eve, you lose the ability to control any picture settings on the display, but you can clearly see a brighter fire in the Sony HDR video sample. There's a separation between the hotter yellow areas and the rest, but on the Studio Display, it all just looks orange. The Eve display can get blacker than the Studio Display because it has local dimming zones. However, it's limited because it only has 16 zones. So if there's any lit up pixels on a dimming zone, it will light up the entire dimming zone, limiting any difference between the Eve and the Studio Display. When both displays are fully lit up, I find the Studio Display to actually be a bit blacker than the Eve. I shot this video with my iPhone 13 Pro with HDR, and the video actually looks blown out on the Eve compared to the Studio Display. The stone around the pool and the decking has lost a lot of its character and features. The shadows are darker under the chairs on the Eve, slightly, but the white pillows are completely blown out as well, leaving no character. Even this white spot on the soccer ball in the shadow looks blown out, actually stripping the detail instead of enhancing it. Unsurprisingly, viewing the same content on the MacBook Pro Liquid Retina XDR display yields much better results. Okay, moving on from the display panels themselves, we can look at some of the other features that these displays offer, like ports. On the back of the Studio Display, you have a single Thunderbolt port for connecting to your computer, and 3 10 gigabit per second USB-C ports for dongles and accessories. The Eve Spectrum has a USB-C connection for display input along with DisplayPort 1.4, 2 HDMI 2.1 inputs, a 10 gigabit USB-C port, 2 10 gigabit USB-A ports, a 10 gigabit USB-B port, and a 3.5mm headphone jack. Honestly, for something Apple calls the Mac Studio and the Studio Display, I'm surprised that there's not an easily accessible headphone jack on these devices, whether it's on the front or the side of the display. It's clear that there are a lot more display connection options on the Eve Spectrum, which is great if you're trying to connect multiple computers or a computer and a game system or whatever. The Studio Display will only connect to a single device at a time. Both of these displays will power a connected tablet or laptop through the USB-C or Thunderbolt connection, with the Eve offering up to 100 watts of power and the Studio offering up to 96 watts. Now, there are a few things that the Studio Display has that the Eve does not, like built-in speakers, camera, and microphones. The short story here is that the speakers are really good, the camera has some issues, and the microphones are acceptable. But together, they offer an all-in-one solution for a more minimal desk setup. The Studio also has better integration with macOS, like controlling brightness and volume from the keyboard, and actually being able to watch streaming content that is HDCP protected through the single connection. The wait time on the Studio Display is also way faster than on the Eve Spectrum, but I talked more about that in a previous video. Additional benefits of the Spectrum is that it has a faster response time for gaming and is G-Sync and FreeSync compatible if that's something you need. Maybe the biggest difference between these two displays, and arguably the most important for many people, is the price. The Eve display with a 4K 144Hz panel is $800 plus $100 for the stand. The Studio Display with the like-minded height and tilt adjustable stand is $2,000. I understand that that's a tough $1,100 pill to swallow for some people, and I'm not here to specifically argue which one is better or worth it, but that is a rather large number. Now, you can get the Eve without a stand and connect it to any VESA mount, saving $100 off the price, or you can also get the Studio Display with a tilt-only stand or VESA mount for $400 less than the 2000 model I have. The Eve comes standard with a matte coating, but you can upgrade that to a glossy version for $100, and the Studio is the opposite, starting with a glossy display, and you can upgrade that to a nano texture glass for $400. Inside the box for the Eve, you get the display and you get the power brick. You don't get any Thunderbolt or USB-C or DisplayPort or HDMI cable or anything else with that. With the Studio Display, you get that built-in power cord, and you do get a braided black Thunderbolt 3 cable that Apple sells by itself for $130. Now, here is something that I think needs to be considered, and that's support and availability. Yes, ordering a new Studio Display may take you months to get because they're back-ordered, but I can pretty much guarantee that you will get one if you order it. Eve, on the other hand, has a long history of failure to fulfill orders, and I talk about that in my Eve video from a couple months ago, so I won't go into that here, except to say that It's very possible that you may order and have zero idea how long it will take to get, or if you will even get one at all. I was finally able to snag one of these on eBay, and I've mostly enjoyed using it, so you can find a link to that in the description. However, getting support is another issue. I mentioned that if the cable on the Mac Studio gets damaged, you may be able to take it to the Apple Store, or worst case, send it to Apple for repair. That would stink, but there's a gigantic support apparatus built up to help you when you have an issue. With Eve, not so much. The button on the back of my Eve came apart into 2 pieces a few weeks ago. I reached out to them via the support email, and it took a few days to get a response. They asked for photos, which I sent, and I'm still waiting for them to tell me if they're going to send me a new button. I've since superglued it back together, and hopefully that will last a while, but if you have any support issues that are worse than a button breaking, I have no idea what kind of support you will get. Okay, I think that covers most of the differences between the Studio Display and the Eve Spectrum 4K. If you're someone who cares a lot about the design of the thing sitting on your desk, wants a display that matches your other Apple devices in quality and color, and has built-in features to simplify your setup, then I recommend the Studio Display. If you're more price conscious, want or need a high refresh rate, or want to connect multiple devices to the display, I recommend the Eve. Both of these devices are great monitors that each offer benefits over the other, and beyond what I've mentioned here in this video, I can't really say one way or the other which one you should get. But what do you guys think? Does the Studio Display have enough to justify the price over the Eve? Let me know below. If you want to see more on my experience with the Eve display, check out this video right over here. Hit the thumbs up button if you liked it, hit subscribe if you want, and I'll see you next time.